call sign Big Red One. We can confirm that Santa is airborne at this time.
Well, Santa delivers for kids around the world, and tonight he'll show us how.
Oh, that's kind of weird.
We'll also track down the Grinch.
And I'm right behind him like, scared!
But we'll start on a serious note. We'll dig into the meaning of Christmas with Bishop Gregory Parkes. And we'll share stories they don't always teach in history class with archaeologists who discovered America's first Christmas. Hello, I'm Craig Patrick, and our prior holiday specials we've lampooned the year in review. And this year we'll do it again, but in the back half of our program, because we'll spend the first half on what this night is all about. And we'll focus on things about Christmas you may not know, starting with Florida and how it became the birthplace of Christmas in America.
You may know Spanish explorers landed in Bradenton nearly 500 years ago. De Soto National Park marks the spot for Hernando de Soto and his Spanish expedition. But you may not know these early explorers also celebrated America's first Christmas, or rather they celebrated in a land that would become the United States nearly 250 years later.
Soto brought priests along, and that as observant Catholics they would have had a Christmas Mass.
De Soto and more than 600 others left Tampa Bay in 1539 and tracked north. And archaeologists found the spot where they settled for Christmas. Today, it's a small park near downtown Tallahassee.
Although it probably did not resemble the Christmas trees and Santa Claus that we associate with Christmas, it would have been more of a solemn occasion with a Mass.
The archaeologists found a lot of artifacts from the site.
And that type of pipe is actually made in Tampa Bay.
And they found pig bones, which may suggest their Christmas Day feast included pork.
To avoid starvation, they brought a herd of pigs with them, which probably introduced wild pigs to the southeast.
Archaeologist Dr. Dan Seinfeld said they also raided the Native Americans' food supply, and they did not write about their Christmas celebration because it was not exactly a time of peace.
We have evidence historically of conflict with the Appalachee, fighting because the Appalachee fiercely resisted the Spanish occupation.
This was a dangerous military expedition that sought conquest over peace. But our legislature and historians say it was also a critical turning point for all of us, well worth remembering long beyond Christmas.
Of course, Christmas changed a lot through the years, and it took off and evolved in some ways you may not expect. And so we asked Bishop Gregory Parkes, who leads the Catholic Diocese of St. Petersburg, to take us through some of the history. Well, Bishop Parkes, Merry Christmas. Thank you for joining us.
Merry Christmas to you, Craig.
Let's start with the biblical origins of the Nativity, the birth of Jesus. You have the Gospels of Matthew, the Gospel of Luke. They are silent on the actual date of Jesus' birth.
They are, and also each Gospel speaks about the birth of Jesus in a different way. In fact, the Gospel of Mark goes right into the preaching of John the Baptist. Matthew speaks about Jesus' birth, but it is really the Gospel of Luke which gives us a more detailed account of the birth of Jesus Christ and how that came about.
And it took a few hundred years into the 4th century for the church to designate a date.
It sure did. And in fact, speaking of the Bible doesn't tell us the actual date that Christ was born. It was the first emperor, Constantine, in the year 336, who designated December 25th as the date that we would celebrate the birth of Jesus. Pope Julius I, a number of years later, made that official on our calendar. And so that's why we celebrate on December 25th.
And Constantine picked a date in which pagans had already celebrated their sun god, Mithra, in which there were already raucous celebrations surrounding Saturnalia. It was a day of feasting and a bit of raucous partying, was it not?
It certainly was, and it was a pagan feast, as you said, coinciding with the winter solstice. So it was the time of the year where the sun was out for the shortest period of time and marked a transition from darkness to a greater increase in light. And that may have been a motivation for setting the date of Jesus' birth as December 25th, was not only to replace that pagan feast with a Christian celebration, but also to mark a time in our history, our faith history, with Jesus Christ being the new light coming into the world and piercing the darkness.
Getting into the Gospel of Luke, the story of the census, the trip to Bethlehem, you have a number of scholars, including some who taught me in parochial schools, who note that Jesus may well have been born in or near Nazareth and not in Bethlehem, but it is unimportant to the broader story.
It is really. I mean, when we talk about date and actual location, we do believe it was Bethlehem, and there is a basilica there today to mark the spot where we believe he was born. However, really, the date is almost inconsequential. It's really the event that's important. The fact that God loved us so much that he sent his son, and sent him as a child, born as an infant, who would become our Savior.
And the church picked a date known for revelry. And then through the passage of time in the 1600s, you have the Protestant Reformation, you have the Puritans in New World America, Oliver Cromwell in England, who don't like those celebrations. It goes underground.
Well, it sure did, and particularly with the Puritans here in the United States, up in colonial parts of the U.S. in Massachusetts, when the Puritans settled there, they didn't particularly like the revelry and all the celebration, the festivity, the feasting. They thought that it detracted from the true spiritual significance of that day. So they tried to suppress it. But ultimately it did come back and was recognized as a day to celebrate a very important religious event, the birth of Jesus.
And this is something that Christian denominations have in common to this day. It is a period of celebration, an outward celebration beyond the church.
Oh, it certainly is. In fact, Christmas, it's kind of interesting because we spend so much time preparing to celebrate Christmas, and then the day comes, Christmas Day, and it almost seems like it ends for many people right after Christmas. For us as Catholics, as Christians, really Christmas Day marks the beginning of the Christmas season, which lasts 12 days till the Feast of the Epiphany.
And the Epiphany, noting the date, the Magi.
That's great. These astrologers or magi, these wise men who look to the sky for signs of world events, they came to see this newborn king that they had heard about, and they presented him gifts, as would be the custom at that time.
We present gifts to one another today, and that would be the origins of sharing gifts in 2018 and 2019 beyond.
It would be tied to that, as well as God giving his son to us as the ultimate gift of love. And so in imitation of his love for us, we give gifts out of expressions of love to each other.
You see a lot of people stringing up lights as well, and before the days of Edison, candles, of course. What does that signify, and how does it relate to the birth of Jesus?
Well, we look to Jesus as the light of the world, and so before him there was periods of darkness in the world, and the birth of Jesus represents a new period of light coming into the dark, which pierces the darkness and ushers in a new period of hope.
It brings us to the story of 12 Days of Christmas. There's some symbolism in these lyrics, are there not?
There sure are. That popular hymn today was actually developed and composed as a way of teaching, particularly children, some of the primary tenets or teachings of our Christian faith. So each of the symbols in the song represents something in particular. Two turtle doves would represent the two testaments, both the Old Testament as well as the New Testament. The 5 golden rings represent the first 5 books of the Bible, called the Pentateuch.
4 calling birds, the Gospels?
The Gospel. So exactly. So each of those symbols represents a teaching of our Christian faith.
And the central teaching, partridge and a pear tree?
Well, the partridge was known to be a bird which would actually sacrifice itself to protect its young, so it would give its own life. And that, of course, symbolizes Jesus Christ himself, who gave his life for us.
And in celebrating Christmas through 12 days, what should one take beyond this into a period of ordinary time throughout the year?
Well, I would say Christmas is, again, a celebration. But it doesn't end. You know, it really should be in our hearts, that spirit of love for each other, hopefully a spirit of peace, a spirit of hope. And we can carry that with us throughout the year. Even though the Christmas tree comes down and the Christmas carols stop playing on the radio and in our homes, that spirit of love which is given to us through Jesus, we can carry in our hearts throughout the whole year.
I'm going to put you on the spot. Your favorite Christmas memory of all time?
Well, I have many from growing up, but I think a tradition that we had in our own family, which is very common, we would set up a somewhat large nativity scene or creche on our front lawn, and every Christmas Eve after dinner and when it was dark, we would go out into the yard and place the baby Jesus into the crib. And that for us meant that Christmas had arrived when we finally placed little baby Jesus in the crib, and we all sang Silent Night.
Bishop Parkes, Merry Christmas, and thank you for your time.
Merry Christmas, Craig. Take care.
Coming up, we'll switch gears to the magic of Santa. Engineers plot his most likely path around the world. Before we bring in Santa Claus, we want to show you how engineers figured out his trip around the world.
47 factorial divided by 6 factorial.
Scientists have figured out the math. Santa Claus must fly more than 3,600 miles per second to visit all the nice children of Earth.
I'm fast.
To pull it off in one night, engineers say Santa may not take off from the North Pole. They say his most efficient route would start near Kazakhstan. From there, Santa would have to fly against the Earth's rotation and cross the date line. That way, scientists say he could, in fact, reach 2.5 billion homes between Christmas Eve and Christmas morning. Now, he would only have 34 microseconds per stop here, but that may be just enough to protect the presents and stay one step ahead of the Grinch.
Santa's all, I'm coming down the chimney and I'm going to put stuff in your stocking. I'm going to put stuff under your tree. And I'm right behind him like, skeew!
At that speed, you may think Santa's sleigh would hit so much air resistance it would catch on fire.
You would think so.
How do you pull it off?
We have a magic gel we put on it.
And that allows the sleigh to travel through folds of time and space.
We fly faster than most of the molecules move.
So you're going through extra dimensions?
On occasion.
If that's the case, never mind a route. He can deliver gifts as we speak.
How many gifts did you just deliver?
More than I could count.
Well, he just did it again.
String theory, or M theory, suggests there are actually 11 different dimensions that weave in and out of our time and space. And Santa may be using at least 10 of them.
Can you take me to the North Pole?
Don't usually do that, Craig, but if you want to go.
Oh, that's kind of weird.
And so goes the science of Santa Claus.
Ho, 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 ho! Merry Christmas, everyone! Ho, 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 ho.
Coming up, we'll bring in the Grinch for our annual parody of the Year in Review, and we'll celebrate Festivus with an airing of grievances.
You're a mean one, Mr. Grinch.
Well, this year, the Grinch snuck in through the mail, took ballots from Broward, and made Palm Beach County fail.
When mechanicals fail, there's not a lot I can do about it.
Fouled the ballot design, so voters skipped a whole race, botched the recount results, and fell flat on his face. And after causing distress and shame of all types, he passed it all off as the work of Miss Snipes.
There are some things that need to be tweaked on all sides.
This year, the Grinch also took from both parties' elite, who never imagined such big names could be beat. They tried and they tried, but could not bail her out, while the other should have never called himself a sellout. Use of the term sellout, did you mean that?
Look.
The Grinch messed with Gillum and Nelson got rolled. He made them forget how you can't trust the polls. And as the governor told us, we have nothing to fear.
I support forcing insurance companies to cover pre-existing conditions.
The Grinch made voters forget what he had told them for years.
The government involvement in healthcare is ridiculous.
And then when Zinke told us he would not drill off our coast.
And so for Floridians, we are not drilling off the coast of Florida.
That fiendish foul Grinch made him take back his boast.
So I put Florida on, but Florida is still in the process.
And after Trump made peace with his foe and said you won't believe what he wrote.
Oh, would you like to see what was in that letter? It was a very interesting letter.
The Grinch snuck through in a flash and stole the whole note.
I haven't seen the letter yet. I purposely didn't open the letter. I haven't opened it.
It was all rather fiendish and as sad as can be. Again, it makes you all wonder if there was one Grinch or three. Is there only one Grinch, or are there many right now in the halls of Congress?
There is only one true Grinch, and that's this guy. Those other guys are imposters.
Mr. Grinch.
Okay, as we look through old news clips, we found an odd holiday tradition that can make people even more cranky than the Grinch, especially here in Florida.
The city of Delray Beach has allowed 2 residents to put up Festivus poles next to the Christmas tree for the past 3 years. Festivus is a made-up holiday made popular by the show Seinfeld.
Now, a lot of people may not realize that when they fuss about Festivus poles, they're inadvertently celebrating the tradition of Festivus, which is exactly what the people who put up the poles wanted them to do.
A Festivus for the rest of us.
This clip from Seinfeld explains how Festivus is supposed to work.
The tradition of Festivus begins with the airing of grievances. I got a lot of problems with you people. Now, you're going to hear about it.
And what started as that made-up holiday on Seinfeld came to life years ago in the Florida State Capitol when an activist planted a stack of beer cans in the rotunda.
Happy Festivus, everyone.
And then people from other states put poles up in their state capitals, and it has been mixing holidays and politics ever since.
This is the airing of grievances.
See, they celebrate Festivus to honor Seinfeld and maybe poke a little fun at stuff that just drives people mad.
I can tell, as students, you have a whole lot to complain about. There's a burning rage inside.
And on that note, there we go. We also put up a little poll here and call on our politicians to commence with the airing of grievances.
Did you have a conversation?
Mr. Chairman? I am tired of this.
I've actually been commencing with that for a while. And since Bob Corker's out, he delivered his airing a few months early.
Well, gosh, we might upset the president. We might poke the bear, is the language I've been hearing in the hallways. We might poke the bear.
Yeah, again, if you want to try this at home, the idea behind Festivus is to tell people how much they disappointed you with pointed questions.
Are you stupid?
And then you're supposed to hit them where it hurts.
America is a better country.
Without you.
Thank you for those kind sentiments.
Now this year, we looked at 2 finalists to deliver the official airing of grievances. And the first was Jeb Bush, based on how he delivered his gripes back in 2016. But as we thought about it, we figured Jeb would probably be a better fit as the warm-up act. Remember how the Seinfeld show always kicked off with Jerry's doing some stand-up routine? Jeb, that's you.
The selfie is now the 11th Amendment of the Bill of Rights. It is a requirement that you take one, and I do it with great joy in my heart. And it's better to do it higher than lower because you look skinnier. Am I right?
Now for the actual airing of grievances, we picked our second finalist, Bob Mueller. And he submitted his grievances in writing. And this is the most explosive one we have ever seen. Mueller actually wrote that in a criminal investigation, and not only that, but it was really the work of, which means he and committed the act of, and what, keep on going, and will surely be going to prison along with clearly the most striking and earth-shattering airing of grievances we've ever heard.
Hey, Craig?
Yeah, Darren, what is it? What?
Yeah, the audience didn't hear that.
Wait, they couldn't hear that?
Well, it was redacted.
Oh, then I guess we'll call an audible on this one this year. So for this year's airing grievances, once again, we'll call on President Trump.
Tomorrow they will say, Donald Trump rants and raves at the press. I'm just telling you, you're dishonest people. I guess it was the biggest electoral college win since Ronald Reagan. And the leaks are absolutely real. The news is fake. Russia is a ruse. I have nothing to do with Russia. We had a very smooth rollout of the travel ban. This administration is running like a fine-tuned machine. As they say, never Trump.
Coming up, we'll wrap up with a stroll through one of the most colorful streets in Florida on Christmas night. Well, thank you for watching our Christmas special. We'll close out our celebration with a trip to the town of Celebration, because a couple of neighbors started something there called the Lights on Jeter Bend that just keeps growing every year.
Relax and enjoy the Lights on Jeter Bend.
First house was our home, decorated for 1 year, and then I got approached by a couple of neighbors and they said, we'd like to participate in that, and so kind of just grew over time. Basically are now up to 11 homes.
I have two favorites, the snow and the fire. Everyone loves the fire. I up it a little bit each year to change things. I added a snow machine this year.
We had an actual lady come up to me during the display, said, thank you so much for doing this. We've fallen on hard times, and this is literally our Christmas.
The children, when they show up and they actually thank me, their parents thank me, thank us for doing what we do out here.
This is a great way for a family to enjoy and come out and have a nice time.